New trouble for one Letitia James. I mean, she kind of just admitted it. She literally admitted it in this thing that she did in New York last night. I think that this story is just ratcheting up. The Wall Street Journal's covering it. Trump talked about it yesterday. Stephen Miller talked about it. I'm going to play all the sound, but I want to start with her trying to give this kind of mea culpa to the audience. It is kind of hard to hear. I'm going to warn you of that. And it's tough. Again, for my audio listeners on Spotify, I apologize. But basically, she's admitting this whole thing. She's in some kind of church-like area, so there's a lot of echo going on. But let's listen to it together. And I can interpret what she's saying if anybody doesn't understand. Here we go.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation to me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney was never used to determine my eligibility for a mortgage for my niece for a home in the state of Virginia. My niece who has children, and because I am an aunt, I wanted her to have a home.
Aww, yeah. Right. Listen, it's not like it was just once. It happened 3 times. We got 3 different examples of this. This kind of stuff doesn't normally happen. You don't fill out the application. Here we go. New York Post found this one. Take a look. This is the specific power of attorney for the purchase of the real estate, saying that I hereby declare that this will be my principal residence. She's trying to say, no, this is just technicality. We didn't really mean to do this. But is that what she's going to say when it comes to how she signed on as her father's wife? I mean, this is like Ilhan Omar style stuff, right, ladies and gentlemen? When he was getting a mortgage, she signed on Letitia James as his wife because apparently she was the only working member of the family. She wanted to have her paycheck being included so he could get the mortgage. Oh, and then there's the brownstone. The brownstone. This is great. Remember how she was after Donald Trump for inflating his square footage, she said, and that would help him get a better mortgage rate. Of course, it was a private transaction between him and his bank, which means the bank would have been on the hook as opposed to taxpayers because she was using federal taxpayer dollars in these cases. And in the private transaction, then it's Deutsche Bank's responsibility to send somebody out and measure the square footage if they so choose to do so. In this case, she's actually using taxpayer funds and putting taxpayer funds at risk. It's mind-numbing. It's so stupid. I mean, the woman is stupid, okay? Really, really stupid. In the case of the 2023 business, that was 2023. So that was the same year, or it must have been after she had already gone into court going after Donald Trump, saying that he was doing various things to get a better mortgage rate. Unbelievable. So the subpoenas have been issued. The Eastern Court in Virginia has issued subpoenas. The FBI has confirmed this is a full-fledged investigation. She's got the Wall Street Journal on it. Now, they've been avoiding this. The whole mainstream media hasn't been covering this at all. I feel kind of lonely. It's just Trish Regan covering the Letitia James story. It's really? You guys don't care about this? I kind of find it to be a major deal. Nobody's been covering it. The Wall Street Journal finally decided to do so. And they're pointing out that, yeah, it's kind of a problem. That Norfolk, Virginia home, listing it as a primary residence would be a problem. Not to mention the 2001 611 certificate for the Brooklyn residents, right, where she's saying, oh, there are 4 units instead of 5, because if there were 4 units, she qualified for a different mortgage rate and a different kind of housing application because she's using federal government funds, these people that like to live off the government instead of working for themselves. That's what they believe everything should be, right? The communist socialists that they are. Anyway, Donald Trump decided to respond to some of this yesterday as this story heats up. Here he is in the Oval Office. Let's listen.
Your thoughts on Letitia James, Director Polte? According to him, Letitia James says that the alleged mortgage fraud was simply a mistake. I want to get your thoughts on that. She put down that her father was her husband in order, and this is very similar to, I guess, the false accounts they have on here.
Well, I don't know what it is currently, but Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of New York State, it seemed, I'm not involved in that at all. I know it's being handled by various groups, I guess, but it's major fraud, mortgage documents, and fraudulent everything. I think she said the father was her husband, which she had to have a husband, or so she chose her father, and she put it down, and she had didn't she sign in Virginia, yet she said she lived in Virginia, yet she's the New York State Attorney General. She did that for tax reasons, so she could take advantage of taxes. And she had the wrong number of units. She had a much different number, which wouldn't have allowed her to qualify and scam the government. So I don't know. I think she's very bad for New York, but I really don't know too much about it, but I appreciate the question. Thank you very much.
Yes. Mr. President, for you to be convinced that there's no genocide.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Did you guys hear that okay? Somebody said they couldn't hear it. Let's go back. Let's listen to Donald Trump again talking about Letitia James.
Your thoughts on Letitia James, Director Polte? According to him, Letitia James says that the alleged mortgage fraud was simply a mistake. I want to get your thoughts on that. She put down that her father was her husband in order, and this is very similar to, I guess, the false accounts they have on here.
Well, I don't know what it is currently, but Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of New York State, it seemed, I'm not involved in that at all. I know it's being handled by various groups, I guess, but it's major fraud, mortgage documents, and fraudulent everything. I think she said the father was her husband, which she had to have a husband, or so she chose her father, and she put it down, and she had didn't she sign in Virginia, yet she said she lived in Virginia, yet she's the New York State Attorney General. She did that for tax reasons, so she could take advantage of taxes. And she had the wrong number of units. She had a much different number, which wouldn't have allowed her to qualify and scam the government. So I don't know. I think she's very bad for New York, but I really don't know too much about it. But
so he's going to say, okay, everybody else is going to listen. Thank you for saying you can hear it. I want to make sure that it's all coming through loud and clear because this is important. 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan. 18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements to the government. I mean, this woman could face 30 years in prison. Okay, 30 years in prison. And it's just mind-blowing in that she's out there accusing him of one thing at the same time, the same year, being guilty of a different version that's far more egregious, frankly, than what she was accusing Donald Trump of, because she's involving federal taxpayer dollars. And this is why you have William Pulte from the FHA referring the case to the DOJ, who then took on the case. And now we have the grand jury issuing subpoenas, the FBI saying, yes, the investigation has begun. Stephen Miller, we love Stephen Miller, okay? Stephen Miller is a hoot and super smart. And he came out with some pretty scandalous things to say this morning on Letitia James. I think serial liar was how he put it, but let's go to Stephen.
Letitia James says the allegations against her are nothing more than a revenge tour by the Trump administration. What's your response?
My response is that Letitia James is one of the most corrupt, shameless individuals ever to hold public office. She is guilty not only of those crimes, but of countless more crimes by using and abusing your public office to try to persecute an innocent man, depriving him of his rights, engaging in a conspiracy to obstruct our election, and to overthrow our democratic processes and procedures. She is guilty of multiple significant serial criminal violations.
Charlotte, I'm looking at your comment. She got the idea from herself. She did, right? So serial violations is what he's saying she is guilty of. Again, we can go back to the Norfolk, Virginia home. We can go back to the Brownstown in Brooklyn 2001, or we can go back to 1983 and the home she bought with Daddy, who was apparently her husband. I mean, wow. Okay, 30 years. 30 years is what she is facing. And her response is, oh, this is a technicality. This is a technicality. She's been on MSNBC. I've showed you the sound before. But, she can say it's a technicality all she wants. I think you're seeing a pattern of behavior here. And what's so insane about it all is that she tried to use a similar line, right, against Donald Trump, except she's too stupid to understand that a private transaction is extremely different than a federal transaction where you're using taxpayer dollars and putting taxpayer money at risk. And she tried to equate this and say that Deutsche Bank was equivalent of the government somehow. And so Donald Trump, therefore, was taking advantage of taxpayers by getting a lower rate on his mortgage because maybe he inflated the square footage of Mar-a-Lago, or maybe he said Mar-a-Lago was worth X when she said it was worth Y. I do believe she thought it was worth, what, $18 million? I'm like, hey, I'll buy it for 18 mil. Really? We'll all get together, okay, guys? We will buy it for 18 mil because we take that trade all day long. Hello. I mean, oceanfront, it's nuts, right? Like, it's worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, but she's trying to say 18 like she knows. Letitia, you're not that smart, and you certainly don't understand real estate. Here's the judge. In that courtroom case, I'm just going to quick soundbite, because Judith Vale, who's allegedly the smarter lawyer because she's doing the appellate court case, she's trying to argue the AG, Attorney General Letitia James's case in front of the appellate court, who I'm really annoyed with because they should have had a verdict on this one and it should be thrown out because the $500 million fine is insane. It will happen. It will happen, guys, because legally this just makes absolutely no sense. And the judges know that for some reason. And I wonder if Kathy Hochul or anybody, this could be political, is holding things up. This judge knows it. This is a private transaction. It's a commercial dispute. It's not affecting taxpayers at large. So why the hell, Letitia James, did you even bring the case? Oh, we know why.
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing?
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market, that hurts the market and honest participants in the market. And the legislature also decided, contrary to what defendants think, that making sure that business in New York stays honest is the way to attract and keep business in New York.
To that point, the Executive Law 6312, I just want to read a section of it. Well, not exactly, but was enacted to promote and protect honesty and integrity. It's the same question I asked the other side. In commercial marketplaces in New York, by stopping fraudulent and illegal businesses. To accomplish this purpose, the statute authorizes the Attorney General to bring civil enforcement proceedings on behalf of the people whenever any person shall engage in repeated fraudulent or illegal acts or otherwise demonstrate persistent fraud or illegality in the carrying on, conducting, or transacting of business. I don't read harm or threat of harm in that, but the other side is saying that that is to be read into the statute. Are there any cases where the language harm or threat to harm limits the scope of the Attorney General?
No, Your Honor, not as to liability and not in cases like this where what the Attorney General is seeking is injunctive relief and disgorgement.
You know, I hate to say it, but the only person on that entire appellate court that even tried to sound sympathetic to Letitia James and Judith Vale happened to be that particular woman that you saw. Everybody else, like one after another, was boom, 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 boom. They were like, you have no victim. Therefore, you have no case. So there's only one holdout there. I'm also going to point out she's going to be out of money pretty soon. Remember how she said that Donald Trump was going to have to sell his assets in order to pay the $500 million fine? Well, Tishy Baby's going to have to sell her assets too to cover her legal bills because guess what? State of New York GOP members are like, we're not paying for this. This is a personal thing. You're the one who can't seem to keep your personal records in order, you know? Signing up for a mortgage as your dad's wife? How is that our problem as taxpayers? It's not. So you know what? Letitia's going to be out of money very, very soon. She's got a high-priced, expensive attorney that was working for Hunter Biden before he took her case. And that means if she can't come up with the money, I think she might just have to sell that little house in Norfolk, Virginia, right? You're going to keep paying for this guy? Wow. I mean, just an amazing, amazing turn of events. Truly, truly, truly amazing. I want to get back to this story that is just the tragedy that unfolded there in Washington, D.C., because we've got some breaking news that I want to bring you right now on this. You know, we talked about Letitia James and pulling kind of an Ilhan Omar sort of move, right? Ilhan Omar allegedly having married her brother or something for immigration reasons. And then Letitia James claiming on a mortgage document she's allegedly married to her dad. Funny what people will do, right?